The Sonoma Community Communications COVID-19 Town Hall. I'm Rick Wynn, one of the many volunteer hosts at KSVY 91.3 FM in Sonoma. We're presenting this town hall via Zoom on all outlets of listener-supported KSVY and Sonoma TV, including Comcast Channel 27, Sonoma TV, sonomatv.org, Sonoma TV on YouTube, KSVY 91.3, streaming on ksvy.org, and on your Alexa-type smart device at KSVY. Be sure to enunciate clearly. Our guests this evening are Senator Bill Dodd, who represents Senate District 3, which encompasses Cotati, Rohnert Park, Petaluma, Sonoma, all of Napa County, and parts of Solano, Yolo, and Sacramento counties. Joining Senator Dodd are former State Director of Public Health, Dr. Karen Smith, and Economic Advisor to the Napa Sonoma Small Business Development Center, John DiGaetano. We're going to start this evening with remarks from our guests, followed by some questions submitted by email. And time permitting, we'll open the phone for some other questions. So without further ado, I'll turn the town hall over to Senator Dodd. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Rick. I really want to thank you and KSVY Sonoma TV for partnering with us on this very important town hall. And I really want to thank our panelist, Dr. Karen Smith, who I've known for quite some time, and also John DiGaetano from the Napa Sonoma SBDC. You know, we're in week 6 of the stay-at-home order. It's been a tough situation, and many people are hurting economically, emotionally, and through illness or the loss of a loved one. As I think of how Californians have stepped up, I am reminded of President Harry Truman, who said, "America was built on courage, imagination, on unbeatable determination to do the job at hand." Whether you're an essential worker in health and safety, or our food supply, or someone sheltering at home to protect our community health, you're embodying the spirit and determination, and it is paying off. The state is working relentlessly to get to the point where we can take additional steps towards normalcy. The shelter-at-home order is not a permanent state. Let me say that again. The shelter-at-home order is not a permanent state. Important surgeries that have been postponed are once again beginning at many local hospitals. And as long as we continue to follow the public health guidance, we're weeks, not months, away from entering phase 2, where we can have many businesses beginning operations with appropriate social distancing. This is a direct result of all of us working very, very hard to bend the curve, literally saving lives over these last 6 weeks. I met with Governor Newsom this week, and we're both committed to California's actions that they're dictated by science, data, and public health, not politics, not protests. That's how California has become a national leader in containing this virus. And as they say, if you want to go far, go together. And we are all in this together. Thank you.
How would you like to proceed, Senator Dodd? Shall we hear from Dr. Smith?
Dr. Smith now? Yes, please. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much for the invitation. I just wanted to sort of point out that we are actually doing very well in California. We moved early to put restrictions in place that could help stop transmission of COVID-19 from person to person. And it really paid off. We have flattened the curve faster than any other state. And despite having been the first state to be as impacted as we were, and including here in Northern California in the Bay Area, but we still have significant issues facing us. We're still seeing high levels of COVID infection and including deaths, unfortunately, in our skilled nursing facilities, for example, and also in long-term care facilities. The good news outweighs that disturbing news. Our hospitals have largely recovered capacity, and that's one of the most important things for being able to reduce the restrictions is if we reduce restrictions, people start interacting, the disease begins to spread, because it will spread. We will absolutely see new cases. The goal is to keep that at a level where we protect the most vulnerable people, for example, people in hospitals, people in skilled nursing facilities. We have adequate capacity in the hospitals for any new cases that do require hospitalization, without getting to the sorts of situations that we've seen in New York and other places. And then that we have enough testing capacity in place that we can catch clusters of cases very early so they don't turn into outbreaks. And that's one of the main things that we're working on right now, is not just ramping up the testing capacity. And in many places in the Bay Area, we are actually seeing significant increases in testing capacity. We also, though, have to have the ability to respond when we detect clusters of cases, and to reinstitute contact investigation for every single case that occurs. That is a huge lift in terms of new manpower that we have to bring into, I should say, person power, but particularly into the public health system, which is not over-resourced, let's just say, with people who actually know how to do this work, know how to investigate individual cases, know how to do contact investigation. And then we have to be prepared to put people in isolation and quarantine until we know they can no longer spread the virus. So those are the things we're working on. We're ramping up as fast as we can. We're using new technologies to enable us to actually do more contact investigation faster. At the same time, hospital capacity is growing and testing capacity is growing. So things are looking much better. But if we release restrictions too soon, we're going to find ourselves backsliding into situations that we can't control. And we're trying very hard not to do that. So I'm pleased that the health officers were able to announce today that they are in fact reducing some of the restrictions, but that we still need to continue to go. They've also announced, and I'll let you read, it's a 14-page order. So if you're having trouble sleeping tonight, you can read the details of what's in that legal order. But it also provides some clear metrics that we're watching, indicators that it's becoming safe to release further restrictions.
Well, this is clearly a health crisis and an economic crisis. And for a little perspective on that, in Sonoma and Napa counties, John, what can you tell us?
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me here today. Hello, everyone. My background is in financial analysis. So what I do is I work with clients on a one-on-one basis. I also do some webinars and also some Facebook Live presentations on getting clients educated in the economic impact that this has for their business as well as the community. So what I've been doing is working with clients to talk them through these programs that we have, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan and also the Paycheck Protection Program. And then there's also some other programs within California, some grants and a few other assistance programs too as well. So the general consensus out there is that everyone is nervous, and what we're trying to do is actually flatten the curve on business economics here, because these clients are really suffering out there in the field, and I hear it every day, all day, and it's really quite disturbing. But we're doing what we can to kind of ease their pain here and have them understand the parameters of these loans and what the repercussions are from this being able to get funded, and what they can do moving forward, going through this process here, kind of reinventing the wheel, so to speak, for their business, being creative, learning how to do things differently as we slowly reopen again. There is some good news. I mean, with the PPP protection program, so that's the Paycheck Protection Program, as of last week, there was, just looking at some numbers here for California, there was over 112,000, actually 113,000 loans approved under that program for approximately $33 billion. So that's good news here. Also, with the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, there's been some advances, 114,000 of those estimating about 484 million. And then there's also for the loans itself, about 6,800 businesses. Still, that's not enough. We still have to really dig into getting these applications processed, and that's SBA that processes the economic injury disaster loan, and then also the banks are doing what they can. However, banks, as you probably have heard, are overloaded in their application process. But what we are doing is trying to get clients prepared for these documents that they need to get this loan processed in a timely manner. There's there's alternative lenders that are kind of pitching into as well, and we're doing what we can to get those guys up and running and at least our clients to get everything prepared that they need. And this is something that is a challenge because they have some forgivable portions of the Paycheck Protection Program, and how to utilize those funds is one thing. But then after the fact, after that 8-week period of forgiveness, how to handle all of that out there. So it's quite daunting for a business that just loves what they do. They're not thinking about the financials. They're not thinking about, their profit loss statement or their business model, or changing that, or moving into a different marketing type of scenario here. So it's quite important. The webinars that I've been doing through San Francisco and the North Bay have been, I think, beneficial for those because we give them updates, the most current information, and things have changed for these programs a bit. And there's been a bit of a lag time here too because of the number of individuals that have been hitting those websites or going online with their banks. So some banks are really, really overloaded and their application process has closed. So you can get an idea of this drama that is unfolding for us. However, we're trying to maintain and understand what they're going through and trying to treat every single client with kid gloves. We have some really good experienced advisors out there that are helping with me along with others and giving them as much resources as we can right now.
Along that line, we had several questions on the small business side, and this is an appropriate time, I think, to ask a couple of them. One is with regard to SBA and the loan program. How is California supporting small businesses now, not planning for 6 months from now? The federal government has certainly failed. Not my comments, those are the comments of the questioner.
Yeah, California has a program that's just rolling out. It's called iBank. It's ibank.ca.gov, which they will issue some funding through the state of California. And those would be loans that are up to $50,000. The program hasn't quite rolled out yet, so we're not quite sure about the interest rate. It kind of is varying here a little bit. There's a forgiveness part of this loan, but then there's also a longer term loan as well. Those who are interested can go to ibank.ca.gov. However, what the criteria is for this particular program is that they do not qualify for any of the federal programs. So there are other local programs too, as well, both in towns and cities. Like, for example, San Rafael, there's one for Hillsburg, there's one for Mill Valley, there's some in San Francisco, business resiliency funds that are offering some grants here that can keep clients or businesses just afloat for a temporary while they're waiting. There's also what's called a SBA bridge loan through banks that are participating in the SBA program. And so that bridge loan is a loan that's been around actually since 2016 or so. During the fires and so on, we use those. And that's kind of a bridge loan to use while they're waiting for other things to come on board. And there's more and more of those opportunities and resources coming out.
Bill?
Senator Dodd? Another thing that the state is doing is they've deferred, all businesses, paid sales tax on the products that they sell, and they've deferred all the sales taxes that businesses would have to pay up to $500,000 for a year, interest free. So it's, look at it's something. It's helpful. That was done with the governor's executive order.
Does the state have the money to withstand the lack of tax revenue that's happening?
Well, one of the things that was pretty amazing that the voters did after the last downward cycle that we had, the greatest, recession since the Great Depression, is we had the rainy day fund, and we paid down debt. Give Governor Brown credit for that. Governor Newsom is doing the same thing. We had up to $20 billion in a reserve fund, which that will be very, very helpful to do a lot of things. That said, the director of finance for the state of California has opined that perhaps this year we could have a deficit of that $20 billion, and in future years, maybe even up to $80 billion. So for now, we've got to do whatever we can to help small business. I think our education system is incredibly important. That, for me, was a big reason why this rainy day fund was, something we needed to do in the first place. I don't think anybody ever contemplated that any of this rainy day fund would end up having to be used for a pandemic and the resulting financial crisis that we have in our state, though.
That would happen so fast. Another question with regard to the SBA and the loans. This may be a political statement, but it's on top of my list of questions that I was given. But what can the state do to compensate for misappropriation of funds from the SBA? Banks which worked with local businesses to get these funds should be publicized, and those who worked only with their big clients and those who had accounts should be also identified.
If I'm not mistaken, I think there's a component in the new funding that has just released $310 billion for the PPP $310 billion for the PPP program that it kind of that addresses that issue that everybody's been mentioning. However, we don't really have any control over that. So, we have to turn to the banks and SBA into monitoring those approvals and how that is processed. So,
Senator Dodd, is there any
probably not.
any jawboning with the folks who got the money, who like the LA Lakers, who didn't really need it, to give it back?
Yeah, I think that public pressure is already working. Actually, a number of different businesses have given money back. I think that's a federal issue. I know that I've discussed, I have 4 congressmen that I work with, Congressman Huffman, Congressman Thompson, Congressman Garamendi, and Congressman DeSaulnier. And I know they in their offices, I think Congress has got to review this. We have a committee of which I'm on that is going to review all the state's actions, both past, present, and future, that will be discussing these things. But since the money is coming from the federal government, any oversight on that money needs to be a congressional oversight. And I think they have at least 2 or 3 different committees that are charged with doing that. Back on the funding and the financial, Congress, the U.S. government can print money. The state of California can print money. We have to have a balanced budget. So that is going to really be able to limit, some of the things that we can do. Although I have some colleagues, including Senator Bob Hertzberg, that's the chair of a committee looking at just what the state can do to stimulate the economy when we come back. Not really at liberty to talk about it now, but it sounds very interesting and doable that we can have a type of statewide stimulus program for new construction as we move forward.
Mm-hmm.
One more question on the economics, and this is a personal one, not personal for me, but for one of the people submitted online. My daughter's out of work due to the coronavirus. She works for a beauty salon. She's been trying to get unemployment benefits from the state for the past number of weeks, but has received letters showing her benefits are zero. She tried to call the office, but with no success. How can she get through the EDD? And if someone has zero unemployment benefits, is it a federal program or a state program that might help that person?
Well, actually, that program just launched through the edd.ca.gov on the 28th, actually yesterday, believe it or not. The regular unemployment applications have been processed if you can get on the site, because they've been inundated with so many applications. However, what I'm told is that these new applications are for sole proprietors, independent contractors, those kind of individuals. And as far as I know, the application is similar, but they've rolled it out, so you might have some difficulty. My suggestion is to go back in there as soon as you can and try to push that a little bit. There is a 800 number you can call, but that also has been just really inundated with lots of calls. So I understand the pressure here on all that.
So one thing I'd like to offer, because I know this is being broadcast and streamed all over Northern California, anywhere, frankly, in the world, people can be on this. But for those people in California that are not getting the benefits that they think that they deserve, whether it was the program that was rolled out earlier or this new program, can call their senator or their state assembly member. And I know that all 4 of my offices are staffed. We've got people working from home at the offices. You can contact us, go on the website, look up Senator Bill Dodd. You'll find our number, our email address. We're here to help, as my colleagues in the Senate and my colleagues in the Assembly are as well. We can help. We're glad to do it.
You're not meeting these days, are you?
No, we don't. We're due to come back as of today. They're saying Monday, May 11th.
Okay, good. Let's get back to the health aspects of this. The big question, of course, in California, Sonoma County, where I live, and this country is all about testing, and on 2 levels. Eunice M. asks, when can people who do not have virus symptoms get an antibody test?
So the antibody tests are rolling out slowly. It's all based on manufacturer distribution. There are challenges with the antibody tests, though. They're very variable. The tests that are actually run in laboratories, several of those appear quite promising. The finger stick ones that people are, sort of getting at home and such, actually are proving not to be great tests. And so there's uncertainty about the quality of the test. Plus, we don't actually know what it means to have antibodies, whether that's actually protective or not. There are studies ongoing right now to try to determine that. The other thing is we don't know whether it's possible to be reinfected with this particular coronavirus and how frequently or how long your immunity might actually last. So the concern that we have with the antibody tests is that we would not want people to make decisions under the assumption that they're immune from infection because there's been an antibody test that told them that it was positive. I think it may make people feel, if it's negative, more comfortable, but they're really just, what you're watching is science in action, and this is science that hasn't been developing for very long, and as a consequence, every day we learn a little bit more. I'm hopeful that there are some very large studies that are ongoing with some of these tests that I think will give us a lot more information over the coming weeks.
Do you see a future where there is a test for the virus that is almost instantaneous? I say like a pregnancy test at home. Is it there's a capability of producing that?
I don't know about at home. Certainly the point of care tests that are being developed, we've had some issues with those, but very soon we'll be rolling out where within 15 minutes at the doctor's office, you'll be able to know whether or not you're positive. And those tests can be quite good. That's what we do with influenza, for example, and strep throat. If you've ever gone to an emergency department to be tested for strep throat, in about 20 minutes, half an hour after you've come in, they come back and say, no, you don't have it, or yes, you do have it. That same technology now exists for COVID-19. And, but the challenge, of course, is as soon as they develop the kits, they're sold out. So they're making these as fast as they can. I know the state of California has actually acquired a number of the machines that run those tests, and is the process of distributing them across the state. But we're a very big state with a lot of clinics. Maybe someday there will be an at-home test that tells you whether or not you've been exposed, but we really don't have those for anything at this point. So I'm not terribly optimistic that we're going to have that in the next few months. I am optimistic that we will have much greater accessibility of testing, including to people who are asymptomatic. But whether those tests occur at home or not, there are a couple of saliva tests that early data is promising that you could get the test at home, kind of like you do if you're doing ancestry.com or you want to, checking your DNA sequencing, that then go back to a lab and are tested and can tell you whether or not you were infected. And I believe they're trying to create ones that actually test for antibody, but it's very early days for these tests.
Early days. We're from everything that I know, we're moving as fast as we possibly can. But when a test is being developed, it has to prove effective in discovering and not discovering and not giving false of either, correct?
Well, not at this time. So normally what would happen with a test is it would undergo very extensive what we call validation in laboratories and by the FDA. So it would be run against existing tests with known specimens, positive, negative, et cetera. In order to get tests out on the street as quickly as possible, the FDA has expanded its normal, it's called our exceptional use authorizations. And those are typically used in extraordinary circumstances for tests that are newly developed. We've never used it on the scale that it's currently being used, which is one of the reasons why we have seen some tests come into broad use that we subsequently determined really were not accurate. And so the FDA is in the process of sort of reassessing that process and maybe tightening it up just a little bit so that we have some certainty about how good the test is, how sensitive it is, which is where you really want to detect it, or how specific it is. You don't want to have it look positive when it's actually finding another coronavirus antibody. And so it's difficult to find tests that can actually do both of those things really well. The current polymerase chain reaction tests and molecular tests are very, very good. And I'm optimistic that we will see those more rapid turnaround tests being much more available over the next few weeks.
Senator Dodd, there's a question about CSU's Maritime Academy in Vallejo in your district opening on May 20th, as soon as May 20th for classes. And that is a state-run institution, is it not?
That's correct. It is a state-run California State campus, California State University Maritime Academy. And they have come up with their plan about how they can proceed moving forward and social distance in their classes and protect their teachers, protect the students as well. Very proud of them. Admiral Cropper and his team, Admiral Cropper is the retired admiral that's the president of CSU Maritime, is doing a phenomenal job there. They really believe that in order to have these graduates, particularly the seniors, ready to go and in the job market, they've got to finish what they started. So I really applaud them and applaud the CSU system for allowing them to advance.
It's not without risk, of course. Is that governed by the laws of the county? Would Sonoma State be allowed to open even if the county had rules against people being together?
I think there's no way that the state of California allowed them to come out with an announcement like this without really thinking it through. The answer to your question is I don't think any of the school systems in general would qualify for this. This particular campus is so small. It's so focused on their mission-driven engineering, shipping, maritime, and those related aspects. And I just don't believe that that is possible, for example, for Sonoma State or Chico State or Sacramento State to do the same type of things, because those schools are so much bigger. They have so many departments, and probably not the type of real estate that they can make that happen with concentrated numbers.
Another question titled Demographics and Data. I would like to get each of your thoughts on possible solutions to the social inequalities nationally within the state and Senate District 3, notably the disproportionate COVID-19 mortality and infection rates in ethnic minorities and the acts of racially motivated violence against Asian community members. And of course, the financial inequality. So many of the jobs that have been laid off are in, especially in this area, the Latino community. So I guess the question is, what can be done? What's being done? What are the thoughts about how to help these people who are at the lower end of the equality scale?
Well, let me start out. I think Dr. Smith could certainly talk about the inequities from health and how COVID-19, disproportionately impacts people of color, lower socioeconomic people that have other health risks, and that's something that as data comes in, we're learning more and more about, and obviously have a great concern. And I believe that's why the governor has really, what's the word I'm trying to use, has mobilized some of the testing to get to some of these areas so that they can get more data, and that will help in that regard. I'm not sure, certainly on jobs, certainly the lower end of the classifications, those people that are hardworking in the back of the house on restaurants, washing dishes, waiting tables, they've completely, been, frankly, devastated in the lack of work there. But that's, hopefully something that, we can get through soon. Hopefully some of those in these takeout operations. I know there's a number of restaurant reviews going on throughout all these counties. And hopefully we can help more by, helping those by ordering, if you possibly can, takeout from these different restaurants. So there's much work to be done in the inequality areas, not only health-wise, but also in jobs and the amount of money that these people are losing on a regular basis.
Okay, it seems that we have a caller, and we'll take our technologies to the next level here, and see if we can get the caller on the air to ask you a question directly. We're going back to our studio for that. Do we have the caller, Bob?
I am here.
Okay, could you speak up a little bit?
Can you hear me? I'm here.
Okay, good. What's your question?
All right, listen. I'm first of all, you answered most of my questions. I'm a 69-year-old white male. I don't work in any service, but I am self-employed. Basically, I'm an umpire. I work for all the high schools and all the baseball teams, and the money I make between March and October is the money I live on. So I've been trying to get hold of unemployment too, but I know you answered my question with the new thing that was put up today on the EPT. My main question here is, I don't mean it to be a political question either, because it's not. But this administration, when he came into office, the CDC was there. I mean, it was there. It was fully loaded. It was prepared for maybe any upcoming epidemic. Now, if this wasn't dismantled like it was, and we're in this situation now, if it was still intact, would we have been better served? Would we have tests now? Would things be a lot easier than all the questions and all the stuff we're going through now? And I'll hang up and you can answer that. Thank you for doing this, Senator Dodd. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for the question.
Okay.
Smith?
I knew you were going to send that.
Anybody?
So I don't specialize in retrospective. I will say that no one has ever encountered a pandemic in the modern era of this magnitude. And were mistakes made? Likely, but I think that there was no way to predict what we would see or the speed with which this pandemic would move across nations and quite frankly, this country. And all of our preparation, it's not clear to me that it would have made a huge difference. Hopefully, I mean, yes, I think we've learned a lot. I think that God forbid this ever happens again, but what we have learned has been incredibly informative, just in terms of planning for the next phase. What happens if we let down our guard and we get more cases again? But no one's ever seen anything like this. No one living today has seen anything like this. And I think it's really important to remember that in the context of, what, looking back and saying, what could we have done better?
And I also think that, the governor has said this, and I really believe this is to be true. There's going to be plenty of time for a retrospective on how we reacted to this at a national level, at a state level, and at a local level. But for right now, if we're going to use collective brain power, time, effort, energy, we need to be putting it all in on solving the problem, continuing to bend the curve, not so it's flat all of it. We need to start getting that to trend lower. And in addition to that, we need to be putting our time and effort. How are we going to help small business? What are we going to do for employees that have fallen through the cracks and individuals? And so there'll be time, but for now, we're moving forward. We're doing the job at hand.
We have another caller, I think, Bob. Caller? Anybody?
Are you looking for phone?
Yes, we're looking for a phone call. Are you calling?
Okay. Yes. My question is what you are doing to help nonprofits to survive this time.
That's a good question. Short and sweet.
There is calnonprofits.org that has some funding programs as well. So look into that. There is some programs out there, and they're usually community minded. So what area are you in?
I live in Napa, California.
Okay. Yeah, I would look in for Napa County and see what's available, but go to calnonprofits.org to get a little bit more research on that. Also, the Federal Reserve .gov has a lot of good information too there, so you can check there. I also wanted to mention that for the other caller that was mentioning about programs for individuals and so on, that there are some programs. I'm pretty proud of the North Bay and San Francisco that has come up with some business resiliency funds and women in business loans and grants, and then also some that are worked through the Office of Economic Workforce Development. So that's officeofworkforcedevelopment.org, and you can kind of check and see what kind of programs that they have available for some of the individuals that may be in some really high stress level jobs and in areas that are really affected by this crisis. So there are some programs out there. They are up and running at times and then close because the capacity on this, because like Nancy was saying, we have so many, this is something we've never seen before. So.
And in Napa, I know there's some nonprofits that got some of the federal money on the first phase, and probably more have applied on the second phase. Also, I know that the Napa Community Foundation has been very generous locally to different nonprofits. And if there's something that my staff can do and take some information from you, if any help that we can be to try to help you locate some dollars for the great work that you do as a nonprofit and others, we'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, also, I just want to mention with that EIDL program and the PPP program, it is available for nonprofits as well. So I would check into those.
Yes.
Thank you, caller. It's a triple-edged sword for nonprofits. There's a greater need for their services. The markets are down, so the donations would fall for that reason alone, and all their fundraisers have been canceled.
Yeah.
It's
I'll
you
tell
know it's obviously it's time that we have no idea.
Well, you know,
Does-
just the same goes for caterers and restaurants and yoga studios and, you know, all of those out there that rely on memberships and all that. So it's a time to reinvent these business plans now in 3 to 6 to 18 months to just plan, have a contingency plan and some kind of focus for the future so we can move forward.
I have a question on healthcare. So I just lost it, but somebody asked about they love their mail carrier, but they're concerned about the mail having paper carrying the virus and then a plastic bag carrying the virus. And I know people who completely clean their groceries when they bring them home before they bring them into the house. What makes sense about what to do here, Doctor?
So what we know about how the virus survives in the environment is that it doesn't do a terribly good job of surviving on things like cloth or paper or even plastic. The types of surfaces where the virus can sustain itself longer are things like hard surfaces, so metal surfaces, marble, so your countertops, your doorknobs, that kind of surface, hand railings, metal hand railings, that sort of thing. So it's those high touch surfaces. So if you're your elevator button, etc. So if you within your own home, hopefully no one is ill, but if they are, those are the areas. Keeping those high touch surfaces clean several times a day is actually one of the best ways. And it's not just, by the way, this virus, but also influenza and others. But things like your mail or your newspaper, very low risk in that circumstance, particularly when you add to it the fact that it is out in the open. We're not really terribly concerned about that. Most of the mail carriers are actually themselves wearing gloves, which is an added protection for those of us who are receiving the mail. But I don't wear gloves to get my mail, and I'm an infectious disease physician, so I am not particularly careful about that. I do, however, I have stepped up the kind of cleaning, and I'm also more careful in terms of when I'm out in public places, the surfaces that I touch.
Speaking of being at home, possibly with someone who is sick, there was a question about the HVAC system in your home. Can that carry the pathogen through the home from one room to another?
Yeah. So again, the science is developing, but it really does. The evidence at this point very strongly that this virus is not what we call an airborne virus. In other words, it doesn't get into the air and stay in the air for prolonged periods of time, like something like tuberculosis or measles do. Very small particles that can go through ventilation systems. Where that has been seen is in very high concentrations of people with profoundly ill with COVID virus and putting out lots of virus. So hospital settings, particularly intensive care. Those are areas where we have seen some evidence for that. But outside of that, in a home, there's no reason to be concerned that your air circulation system is going to spread the virus outside of a particular room. That said, now that the weather's nice, it's always good to have more fresh airflow.
Okay, I'm informed that we're stacked up on the telephones all of a sudden. So we have Carolyn from Esparto is ready to ask a question. Carolyn?
Hi, am I on?
Yes, you are.
Great, thank you for taking my call. I wanted to talk about some of the information that is out on the state's update.covid19.ca.gov website, which is the statistics that are coming out from around all of the counties in the state. And as my senator from Northern California, I would like to know why we are not approaching more of a localized or regional approach to the situation. I'm not discounting how serious it is and how we need to take precautions, but we've been doing this for 6 months, we have achieved the goals of flattening the curve. In fact, California was, in good shape throughout this whole period. And as the doctor said, the hospitals are well prepared. There is lots of excess capacity. So as of today, about 68% of all of the cases and deaths are in 5 Southern California counties. About 50% of the counties in the state have had 2 or fewer deaths. And as of the data that came out for yesterday, about 50, maybe 49 of the 58 counties in the state have had no new deaths. So I'm not discounting the seriousness of the problem in Los Angeles County that is still seeing increases of deaths and cases. But why are we taking this one-size-fits-all approach in a state that is larger and more diverse than most countries? Why are we not taking an approach of isolating the very vulnerable in skilled nursing facilities and quarantining those who are actually sick instead of locking down and devastating a whole state economy? And I would like to also add that, as you're talking about disproportionate impacts to, certain communities, the working class communities are the ones who are being horribly impacted and are not going to recover with a few government handouts and loans. I think that the government response is far worse than the risk of the pandemic, which is at this time overwhelmingly in Southern California.
Carolyn, let's let Senator Dodd answer your question.
Yeah, and I think this is going to require Dr. Smith to chime in after I'm done, with some, more facts. I couldn't disagree with you more. This is a big state. You're absolutely right. The reality is we have flattened the curve because everybody's done a great job. You need go no further than the support that the state of California has gotten from Yolo County, which is your county seat in Woodland, but with the elected officials in Davis and Woodland and Winters that have been all on board and frankly had requirements in excess more than what
I disagree with my local elected officials.
Okay, that's fine. I
The
think
fact that they're in support of it isn't answering my question.
Well, I'm answering your question, and then we're going to need to get on with this. But the reality is had we not done what we had done, I am convinced.
I'm not asking about what we did. I'm talking about what we
so that we can answer
forward.
the question? I mean, let's get real here. So we've got to get through and get other questions as well. I don't. This is just a point that I think we have to agree to disagree. I think Dr. Smith may be able to bring some science to bear in here, but let me tell you, as early as Monday when I was in talking to the state public health people and the governor, they were incredibly concerned about a potential spike because of what happened over the weekend with people congregating at beaches, congregating at Lake Berryessa and different places, not social distancing. This thing, and we've seen it in other countries, can get out of control. Once again, I do not dispute small business, the working class have been disproportionately impacted here. But let me tell you, if we didn't have this, we would have way more deaths approaching what these other countries have had. And we do not want to go back and open up and then have to go back and close it up again because we didn't do it right. It's not a 90-yard dash, it's a 100-yard dash. Dr. Smith?
Yeah, if I gave anyone the impression that hospitals have masses of additional capacity, that is incorrect. What I said, I believe, is that we are gaining capacity. So we are not putting as many new patients into hospitals. But we are nowhere near where we would feel safe. I want to remind people just how fast this virus moved. If you look at Santa Clara County, we went from the first case to an overwhelming number of cases in less than 2 weeks. we had hundreds of cases. It will do it again if we don't continue until we've built up the infrastructure that we need to do exactly what the caller suggested, which is find every case and put them in isolation, find all of their contacts and put them in isolation. The more cases and contacts we have, the harder that is to do. And the longer we are able to stay in where we are, the better we will be to do that. And we are not actually taking a one-size-fits-all approach to the state. I will point out that each region and each county has taken a slightly different approach that is based on their local epidemiology. That's what health officers do. They look at their circumstances. In a place like the Bay Area, where while we do have a number of different counties, people move from county to county. So we are trying to move in concert. That doesn't mean each county is doing exactly the same things. Napa County is not doing exactly the same thing as Santa Clara County is doing. Everybody's looking at their own circumstance. And I would point out some of the regions where the least number of cases have been also have the least capacity in their health and hospital systems to take additional patients. Rural areas in particular, people are much greater risk of dying from COVID for lack of access to healthcare. So please don't mistake anything I said earlier as saying we're ready to start releasing in large numbers, because we're not.
And one extra thing to talk to answer her other question. Yes, regional issues will be considered in the governor's orders. He brought that up in his press conference, I believe, on Monday.
And there's also the issue of mobility, people going in and out of areas. Let's see. We have James on the line from Napa. James?
Yes, thank you for taking my question. With the CDC release of the guidelines for opening up America again, there are large venues that are allowed to operate under strict physical distancing protocols. And my question is given that the churches are a status of non-essential, and the state has indeed made it a religious judgment, when will churches be able to implement the protocols prescribed and open up?
I believe that's phase 3. I could be wrong on it. I don't have it all committed memory, but I believe that's phase 3. So I think really it's a matter of the curve. Once again, using data and science, it'll be weeks, not months. But they're going to have to physical distance and really have a plan to keep their parishioners or churchgoers, safe. Because go ahead, Dr. Smith.
Yeah, no, I just want to add, I think it's a misperception to assume that there's anything about the activity that is a judgment call being made. The social distancing measures are based on how many people can a single infected person infect. And the larger the crowd and the tighter the circumstances and the longer they're together, those are the highest risk settings for outbreaks, as we saw in a church.
That, following the protocols of the social distancing that the CDC recommends, I think we could follow those protocols and allow for that gathering of the masses. It's a matter of being responsible and allowing the liberties of the individuals of the country to gather as our liberties allow us, and we aren't able to do that, and it's very frustrating.
Well, the good news is many congregations have found ways to work within the current restrictions, including some.
Going online is not the same as gathering as a community. It is just not the same. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, James. I'm sorry, James. We're all frustrated on virtually every level, but we do have another caller, and we actually have a lot of callers, so we need to move this along a little bit. I'm sorry, caller. I don't have a name.
Move it up in the phases. That would be great. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, caller. Caller, are you there?
Hello. Can you hear me?
You bet.
Okay. I got actually 2 quick questions. The first is that the federal government was sending out some $600 checks do people on SSI get those checks? I was told people on SSDI get it and people will pay their taxes. But what about people on SSI?
John, you aware of that?
I can't answer that. I'm not sure about that. That's a good question. So
this is outside my health realm, but I do have a relative who's on SSI, and our understanding is that yes, they do get those checks.
Yeah, I found it here. If you didn't file a return for 2018 or 2019 tax years, you'll need to apply with the IRS. You can check the status of your refund or file to receive one as someone who didn't file their return. You need to go to www.irs.gov/coronavirus. /coronavirus/get-my-payment. I wonder if we could post that up somewhere.
Wow.
But you could also tomorrow call my office and we'll get you that information.
Did you have a second quick question, caller? I guess not. Bob, do we have another caller? We have another caller on KSVY 91.3 Sonoma and all the other media that we're on, Bob.
Hello.
KSVY.
Hello.
Hello. You're on the air.
Oh, I'm on the air. This is
You
Joe
betcha.
from Benicia, and I have a question for Senator Dodd. It's been reported in the national media that many small business owners are not applying for PPP because they realize that when they reopen, and of course that's going to happen on a gradual basis for some businesses, especially like restaurants, that they're going to have to lay off people. So they don't see the utility of accepting that money only to have to repay it, if you will. They won't qualify to have it become a grant. Are there programs available to small business owners in that situation that the California government is going to put into place or otherwise available?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I just want to mention that on the PPP program, that's primarily designed for payroll protection. So in other words, it's 8 weeks of compensation to employees and the individual owner as well for that period of time. So it's a little bit less of a burden on the other systems, for example, EDD and so on. That amount, if it's well documented, is forgiven. So that particular amount is forgiven. The other side of the coin here is the economic injury disaster loan, which gives you approximately 6 months worth of operational money. Now, I understand that at that point in time, you may not be able to afford after the 8-week period, if this carries on, like we're talking about, you may not be able to keep those employees on board depending on your volume of business. However, you might have some resemblance of business there. So it's a little bit of aid. There's other programs that are coming out too as well. It's hard to tell when they'll be launched, but we'll just have to inform our people, our clients, and in the community when those things become available.
Thank you. A touch of station business. You're listening to KSY FM 91.3 in Sonoma. Normally at 7 o'clock, Senator Dodd, we play a song that people come out of their houses and sing. We send it out every day, and people have the words and they can sing along with our music. But of course, that happens at 7, and it's now 7:02, 7:03, and we're still on. Thanks for being with us and staying with us. We have Jason from Fairfield on the line. Jason?
Rick, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt, but I'm afraid I have to drop off the call. I apologize. I have a briefing I have to get to.
Okay, Dr. Karen Smith, thank you so much for being with us. Been very helpful.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for all you do.
How long is that song? Should we sing the song with the community?
Can you sing, Bill?
I don't think your listening audience would appreciate that very much.
Me neither. Me neither. Jason from Fairfield, are you there? Hello, Jason from Fairfield.
Sorting it out. Hold on.
Okie doke. This is our first attempt at this. I think it's going pretty well.
I do too. Great job.
They're just working hard back in the studio. Those mice are running like crazy. Keep the transmitter going. We're waiting for Jason from Fairfield. Did you see special events opening, like the NFL season and things like that? What chance do you give that? And will there be social distancing rules, like maybe nobody in the stadiums or every 6 seats full?
I think it'll start out with nobody in the seats. I think the Major League Baseball, the NFL, I don't know what NBA is doing right now. They're all trying to come out with some contingency plans. Obviously, they've got issues because from a competitive standpoint, they can't let's say Oklahoma City right now doesn't have any, I don't know if that's true or not, but doesn't have any restrictions, whereas Oakland's got and San Francisco's got lots of restrictions. There's a competitive disadvantage, and that's happening in Chicago, New Jersey, all over the country. And so they're even kind of holding off, even allowing workouts to start again.
Yeah. Jason is back on the line with us. Jason, you have a question?
Hello. Thank you, everyone, for your time and being open to hearing from people. I know it's stressful for everybody, so I appreciate that. I guess my question is, I'm just, I value life. I value the economy as well, value everything. I've seen the plan to open things up. A concerning thing for me is, I'm still blessed. I have a full paycheck, and so is my wife. We're very blessed and fortunate. I'm kind of lost as a citizen here, seeing this unfold. I know there's no vaccine that's been created for coronavirus before. There may or may not be any treatments that come out for this that are effective in dealing with it. I understand that there's opening phases, but I know once we start opening stuff up, we're going to have a spike in cases again, and then that may lead to more shutdowns, may not, I don't know. But what's the end game here, I guess? If no vaccine is found, it's going to go on for 6 months. This is going to go on for 9 months. And, is there an acceptable level of fatalities and admissions to hospitals we are going to accept as a society, I guess, as we do for other diseases?
Well, let me try that on. I think the end game for this is health and safety for our population. We know that there's lots of families in our country, lots of families in our state that have lost loved ones. That is something that is we want to minimize. As we have bent this curve, we still have not dropped the number of new cases. We really have not dropped that much of the number of new hospitalizations or ICU beds that are being used. So if we, obviously, I think that as we do open up, if we're still doing social distancing, being careful, wearing face masks, this is going to be with us for a while. I was watching the national news tonight. I've become addicted to all sorts of news shows, but I'm telling you, I am encouraged. I am encouraged about our American spirit and the American ingenuity. The state of California is home to the biotech industry. I really believe that they're coming up with, medicines right now that they think might, work, but they have to be tested, peer reviewed, and it's none of this is coming fast enough. But I think the end game is to not overrun our hospitals, to not kill. I mean, look at our businesses. A lot of individuals are not as lucky as you, caller, or lucky as I am, for that matter. But we want to get this economy open as quickly and as safely as possible. And when we start seeing those numbers downtick, that is when it's going to happen. It'll be weeks, not months.
Thank you, caller. We have Matthew from Vacaville. Matthew.
Hi. Thank you. My question was, what is the plan for getting more testing rolled out? And do we need more cooperation from the federal government on that?
Well, the answer, yes, we need more cooperation from the federal government. It seems like it's, one day we have all the testing in the world, the next day, oh, okay, great. I'll tell you, our governor spoke very highly of President Trump on Monday on this very issue, that he called him and told him we need more testing. We were doing tests on a daily basis in the 10,000 range last week. We're about 20 to 25,000 this week with the tests we're getting in from the federal government. They want to ramp this up over the next 2 weeks to 60 to 80,000 tests a day. So I'm confident that this governor knows that he needs, Governor Newsom that is, that he needs the science, the data to suggest when and where and how fast that this economy can open up, and particularly getting these tests as he did in Eureka, in some of these other areas, and a lot of these areas that have been disproportionately hit, lower income areas where higher predominance of people of color are at that are dying, or minority communities that have a higher susceptibility on this to death. So it's coming, and that's the way that we are going to be able to make these critical decisions regionally to be able to open up our economy when it is safe.
Governor Newsom does say time after time, it's data driven.
That's right. Not politics, not pressure, data and science.
And if he's complimenting Donald Trump, it's not politics. We have Jimmy from Sonoma. Jimmy, you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering if you think we will be able to continue getting drinks to go from restaurants, and also if there are things that the state can do with the alcoholic beverage control that would make it easier for restaurants and wineries.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I am the chairman of the Governmental Organizations Committee. As such, we oversee not only the Office of Emergency Services, which is why I was there on Monday, but we also oversee the Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control. And I talked to Jacob Applesmith, the director, today. That is going to continue for the foreseeable future. Its ability to continue when this crisis is over is going to probably be up for review. No guarantees on that. But one of the things I talked to him about today was, not only in our restaurants, but in our wineries, if we're really asking people to be social distance, we really need to allow them to expand to the extent that they can by city and county code. And I'm sure so right now there's restrictions from ABC on, the ability, in restaurants, for example, they're very defined where you can serve alcohol. Well, if people can go to certain areas that restaurant owns to expand a little bit more tables and everything, why not? It really makes sense for us right now to take the brakes off on enforcement, making sure that we're not serving underage people. Restaurants know and understand the importance of that. We just need to be able to back off on some regulations so that we can give our restaurants and tasting rooms, for that matter, the opportunity to accelerate as quickly as they possibly can.
Well, we're going to end it with that question, callers. Thank you all very much for participating. Senator Dodd, do you have some final parting words for us?
Yes. First of all, Rick, I want to thank you and KSVY for giving us this opportunity to really, we heard from callers from all over Northern California. Appreciate that very much. And John, thank you for being on. And to Dr. Smith, thank her. For those that didn't get their question answered, please contact my office. Again, you can look me up online on Google. You'll find us. If you're in a different district, call your assembly member or senator. We're here to help. Our staff is working, believe me, overtime, and we have the ability and the capacity to answer these questions and also get help for you, for unemployment benefits, and really try to see what we can do to make sure that you get everything you possibly deserve. So thank you all, and thanks to our listeners for being on tonight. Keep safe. Remember, we're in this together.
Thank you, Senator Dodd, and thank you to everybody who participated. Thanks to the production team back at the KSVY studios in Sonoma. And it's frustrating, difficult times for all of us, that's for sure. And we heard some of the frustration tonight. And I'm sure that we'll be hearing more of it over time as this goes on. But just keep on doing what you're doing, gentlemen. And Karen, thanks so much. And we'll see you around. Take care.
Thank you, Bill.
Have a good day, everybody.
Rick, thank you.
KSVY 91.3 Sonoma. That's it for us. Maybe we'll have the song of the night next.
We are, right, Ricky? And here I come. We're going to play this.